It was just a ginger ale. Well, good evening, everybody. We are tonight going to see what's up with Adam Cooper and his brother Levi. Last night we left off in April morning. Adam had gone on a walk with his girlfriend, I guess that's what you could call her, a lady of interest, and come back home, and he had this weird thing going on. Do dreams really show us the future? Do dreams really kind of give us an insight into what's coming up? And when we left off, his brother had just woken up from a nightmare and come running into the room. Calm down, I said to him. The whole sky is red. It isn't. I pointed to the window. If it was red, we'd see it from here, wouldn't we? Anyway, people aren't supposed to dream in colors. They say you dream in black and grays. I had a dream, Adam, and the whole sky was a terrible red. And I died. You can't dream you died. You'd never wake up if you did. Then I almost died. Are you mad at me? Not anymore. Go to bed. Why ain't you mad at me? Look, Levi, I said. I'm tired and I'm sleepy. So why don't you go back to bed? Because I'm afraid. I'll tell you why you're afraid. I'll tell you why you dreamed the sky was red. It's because you and those other crazy kids spend all your time playing war. Bang, bang, there goes another red coat. You have red on your mind even when you're asleep. That's why you dream that the sky is red. I got out of bed and pulled him over to the window. Now look for yourself. Is the sky red or isn't it? Levi pressed close to me at the open window. We became silent as we stared into the night. A few shreds of cloud lay across the moon, but plainly enough, we could see the treetops, the common, Cousin Simmons' house, the Peabody house, the Buckman's Tavern, where the road to Monotony bent around the common. It must have been about an hour past midnight then, perhaps a little earlier, but already the time of night when silence settles like a heavy blanket, and a voice above a whisper is cursed and interdicted. I took comfort in the fact that Levi and I were sheltered in a strong house, with our mother and father nearby, with so many friends and neighbors within call. I have heard our relatives from Boston talk about some disdain about the few cultural offerings of a little town like ours, and about the bigotry and narrow-mindedness that is inevitable in a village. But at this moment, I wouldn't have changed the security of my bedroom for all the wonders of the world. I can assure you that if you are thinking about going adventuring, or the sea and the wonders, or the far Cathay and the Indies, the middle of the night is no time for it. So back then, Adam's talking about, boy, is it different living in a city, in a urban area. Not that cities like Boston were really urban, like we consider it today, but a lot of people say, hey, Mr. Martin, you live in Middleburg. That's where a lot of country folk live, right? It's a different way of life, and it's certainly a different way of life back then. Levi's skinny body was pressed up against mine, and I could feel him shivering under his nightshirt. I forced myself to be gruff and assured as I said to him, There, are you satisfied? Adam, listen, he whispered. He had ears like a bat. I listened, but I couldn't hear anything but the soft, sighing night noises. Adam, I hear hoofbeats. Well, suppose you do, Levi. There are travelers by night. Travelers don't race their horses in the darkness. I heard it now, and Levi was right. The sound was of a horse being raced through the night, and clearer the drumbeat of its hoofs. I strained my eyes towards the Monotony road. But it was too dark, and there were too many trees obstructing my vision for me to make out the rider. But the rider was nearer now, and the hoofbeats echoed in the whole village. Then he pulled up in front of Buckman's, and I heard him shouting at the top of his lungs, although I couldn't make out the words, being that Buckman's is a way station. They always keep night lights burning, and now lights began to flicker in the windows of the tavern. I heard the rider shouting again. Father came into the room, pulling on his trousers over his nightshirt. "What are you boys doing at the window?" he asked. Levi told him breathlessly. "You're sure a rider was racing?" We heard him shouting again. Mother came in carrying a candle. Lights were beginning to flicker in some of the houses. I don't see why," Mother said. "A rider by night must take us all out of our beds. You get under the covers this instant, Levi, and you'll get the death from a cold in this night air." Granny then appeared behind her, demanding to know why everyone was up about in the middle of the night. "Is someone sick, Moses?" "No one is sick," Father replied. "Why don't you all go back to bed?" "Why don't you?" Mother countered. "Now look, Sarah. There was an express from Cambridge. He came up the Monotony Road, didn't he?" Turning to me. "That's right." "Well, if it's an express, it's committee business. A man doesn't take a chance on breaking his neck in the dark, rutted road without being in a matter of some importance. And if it's committee business, I have to be there." Mother shook her head speechlessly, and Granny said that she might as well go downstairs and put up coffee, because it didn't look like there'd be much sleep in this house for the whole rest of the night. Father went back to his room and he finished dressing, and Mother went downstairs after Granny. I pulled on my shirt and trousers, and Levi wanted to know what I thought I was doing. Through the window, I could see lights in almost all the houses by now. I told Levi that I had no intentions of missing whatever was going on out there. "Then I'm getting dressed too," Levi said. "It's no business of mine what you do, but Mother will pin your ears back." "Not if you don't tell on me. I'll go out the window and down over the shed. You going to tell on me, Adam?" "Oh, believe me, you're a fine one to talk about telling," I said to him. "Every time I take a step, you're there to play the rat. It would serve you right if I did tell. But you won't, will you, Adam?" "I won't," I admitted. "But I won't lie either. If Mother asks me where you are, I'll tell her." "Maybe she won't ask you," Levi said, hopefully. Father had just closed the door behind him when I got down to the kitchen. Mother gave me one of her looks and said, "Well, I suppose it's morning. I suppose the good Lord forgot to bring up the sun and this once, but you know better." "And just where do you think you're going, Adam Cooper?" "Only over to the common, Mother, please." "March right up to bed." "Mother," I said slowly, "you know I never disobey you." I should think not. "But if you don't let me go, I got to disobey you. Every house in the village is lit up, and all the men are turning out to the common. You can't make me stay here." "You're not—" I think she was going to say I was not a man, but Granny interrupted. It was the first time, as well as I could remember, that Granny had ever intruded into a discussion at odds between Mother and myself. She only said quietly, "I think Adam is right, Sarah. He ought to be there." I imagine Mother was too shocked to reply. She nodded, and without allowing the matter to cool, I dashed out of the house and took off for the common. Middle of the night or not, the village was up and awake, and every man and boy in the town was either already at the common or heading for it. When I reached there, a crowd had formed around the rider, packed around his horse, about 10 deep, and you could see from the way he sat on his saddle, proud as a king, that he was enjoying the attention. As far as we were concerned, he was the most important man in New England. Important enough to make my father and Jonas Parker and the Reverend, the three of them at the horse's head, wait until he finished draining a mug of beer and someone had passed it up to him. When he finished the beer, he wiped his mouth on his sleeve, and he indicated his willingness to continue. He was a young fellow, and I noticed a handsome pair of black riding boots he sported. By then, I had wondered, By then, I had wormed my way into the crowd. I had I had also gathered from the talk around me that he rode a warning express, that the British had marched out of Boston, and that a great army of them were headed this way, up from Charleston to Cambridge, and then on to Monotony. I didn't believe it, not at first. For months and months, the talk had been that the British would send a force into our townships and put an end to the militia drilling and the committee organization, but they never did. And somehow we had accepted the fact that they never would, and that all the hot talk would simmer down, and there would be a meeting of minds, what my father called an intellect, an equitable settlement of all the points of dispute. Yet here was a rider telling us a British army was coming. Sorry about that. Now, just one thing, my father was saying to him, just one thing. What time did they start? I told you they were getting into the boats to cross the Charles at 10 o'clock. That's 3 hours ago. Did you wait until they crossed the river? How long did it take them? I waited until the first of them set on to dry land, I did. And they were forming up on the Monotony Road. We just decided not to wait any longer. Well, what time was it then? Parker demanded. Heavens to Holland, mister. What did you expect us to do? Build a fire so as long as we could read our clocks? All they had us do was catch sight of us, and that would be the end of any hope of me being here. Then you don't know what time they got across the river. Well, just how long does it take an army to cross a river, mister? That's what we're asking you, my father said with unusual patience. And I don't know, which is what I'm telling you. Did you come straight here, said Reverend? By the Lord, I did. Hell for leather. And I like to broke my neck in the pitch black road. I'm here, ain't I? But I can't sit here all night. There was 4 of us. One took off for Medford, the other for Brookline, the third for Waterton, you see. The meaning of it all, one road or another. They'd be going to Concord where the stores are. Someone played the dirty rat and informed that the committees were stashing away whatever they could put their hands on at Concord. So however they're coming, you can believe me, Concord is where they're headed at. But they wouldn't need an army for that, my father protested. They wouldn't need an army just to confiscate the supplies in Concord. Don't argue with me, mister, please. Only how many troops, Parker insisted. Don't you see? We've got to know. Mister, it's nighttime, and we were hiding. Did you want me to count them? 1,000, 2,000, how many? 1,000 at least, maybe 2,000, maybe more. They had a line of boats stretching across the river, and every boat packed full of redcoat soldiers. That's all I know. Now make way for me. Let go of my reins, mister. The crowd opened up for him, and he spurred his horse. He was a good rider, but wild and careless. He saw the common rail, and at the last minute he jumped it, sailed over it, light as a feather, then rode hallooing and shouting down the highway toward Concord. After that rider departed, the common showed signs of becoming the liveliest debating area in all of New England. Well, and that keeps coming up, the common. And I know we talked about this in U.S. history, but typically, most New England towns had a common, and I guess today we would probably call it like a town park. It was a place where typically in the center of the town, everybody would come together for different reasons and for different things. And a lot of times it was to talk about important events, and the militia would trade on the common. So after the rider departed, the common showed signs of becoming the liveliest debating area in all New England. The central argument involved the committeemen and the militia officers, and the reverend, who was torn between the committee and the militia on one hand, and God and the church on the other. The secondary arguments involved the male citizens who supported one faction or another. The final arguments were mostly between mothers and their children, involving the chill of the night air, the general lack of decent attire, and the effects of the loss of sleep. Along with these 3 major areas of dispute, there were many sub-areas where tempers ran high. individual duels between man and wife, mother, daughter, father, and son, all of it adding up to the briskest night scene I recollect in all my life. A dozen sputtering pine torches lit up the scene and gave it quality. At the center of the dispute were four positions. Jonas Parker wanted an immediate muster of the militia. Since we had stored a hogshead of powder and another of lead shot in the cellar of Buckman's tavern, Parker suggested that as our mustering point. Mr. Buckman agreed nervously. Everyone could see that his mind was oppressed with the question of whether each man would pay for food and drink consumed or whether it would be billed to the committee. Things billed to the committee had a way of being written off with a noble gesture, and there's nothing can be as destructive and disturbing to a small businessman as a noble gesture. So one of the things this guy's worried about is if everybody in the militia comes and gets food and rum or beer for me, am I going to get paid back for it? Am I going to get paid for it at all? And who's going to be the person that's going to pay me? My father, on the other hand, resisted a militia muster. It was incumbent upon him to take an anti-militaristic position, and he bolstered his argument by suggesting the dangers of arming every sleepy citizen in the vicinity. Someone was bound to get hurt. Instead, he pressed for a committee meeting in the church. If a redcoat army really was moving up the monotony road, it couldn't move at much faster than a snail's pace in the darkness. And we had plenty of time, and there was no reason to lose our heads and jump to any wild conclusions. The Reverend's position was that before we did anything, we should check the facts. I had half suspected he might put in a bid for a long prayer meeting, but all he desired was a practical approach to the problem. A number of citizens were pushing for an immediate ringing of the bells, just on the chance that someone in the neighborhood might still be enjoying his night's sleep. And the Reverend said, "When the time comes for ringing the bells, we'll ring them, brothers. But let's just see where we stand before we go all half-cocked." Now, what does that mean? Half-cocked. That musket, right? When you're getting ready to fire the musket, you're going to bring it back half-cocked. And then when you're ready, you pull it back all the way and pull the trigger. I think being half-cocked means something different today. Sam Hadley stated, the fourth position, that at Much Ado About Nothing, not for a minute did he believe a wild tale about the British Army marching up from Boston. It made no sense, he said. Anybody who knew the British knew that they didn't march at night. Why should they? To take us by surprise at Concord, someone said. What kind of surprise? When it's going to be dawn before they're halfway there. I am very parched tonight. The point I want to make, the Reverend said, is this. Just for the sake of argument. Suppose there is an army of 1,000 men bound this way. Now that puts the question up to us, doesn't it? The muster roll of the committee adds up to 79 men, providing nobody's sick or absent. Now, it's all very well to talk about our rights. But just what are we going to do with 79 men facing 1,000? Good heavens, brothers. It's not like we had experience in this line of work. We are not soldiers. The only man in my congregation shot another is poor Israel Smith when he put a load of birdshot into his brother Joseph's sitting place. And I see Joseph standing there, and he'll tell you it's not a rewarding experience, not for him who gives or for him who receives. So it sounds like Israel Smith shot his brother in the butt. It must have been a hunting accident. I say amen to that, Joseph Smith agreed. If we had only put a little differently, the Reverend would have had my father on his side. There was nothing my father loved better than an appeal to reason and a nice point of logic, just melted in his mouth. But somewhere in the Reverend's words, there was an implication of incompetence and even of cowardice. My father was just unreasonable enough to talk down to the committee and the militia. Oh, excuse me. My father was just unreasonable enough to talk down the militia and to defend the committee in the same breath. And though militia and committee were composed of exactly the same 79 men, my father made a sharp distinction between them. The one, he held, was a quasi military body, and nothing, he felt, adds to a man's foolishness as much as playing soldier. The committee, on the other hand, was a tribunal dedicated to unity, justice, and the rights of men. To use my father's own words, the finest form yet known in man's response to all of his destiny, I admit this description is flowery and a bit strong for anyone who had met our committee face to face. But my father loved the committee and cherished it. But when the Reverend came straight out with his doubts concerning the odds, 79 to 1,000, my father was caught on twin horns of principle and militarism. Later the same night, Cousin Simmons remarked on my father's response. Cousin Simmons blamed the Reverend for a lack of faith and noted that when the Reverend should have been invoking Gideon, and the Lord said unto Gideon, the people that are with thee are too many for me to give the Mennonites into their hands, lest Israel vault themselves against me, saying, mine own hand hath saved me. He was instead meddling with the most temporal matters, naming the practical odds in a fight. Father must have had the same thought in his mind, and in any case, the principal waved like a flag. Reverend, he said, with all deference to your experience as a man of the cloth, you seem to have missed the point. How? Reverend demanded. Everyone on the common perked up until now, and the argument had been compounded out of confusion, uncertainty, and disbelief. But the ringing note in his voice, a tone Father reserved for the higher disputation, informed everyone that Moses Cooper stood firmly on a principle. Other men might have backed down, but next to my father, the Reverend was the most decisively opinionated man in the village, and the two of them at odds was worth walking a long way to see. The babble of voices died down, and the people pressed close around my father and the Reverend. Well, sir, Father said, let me take you up the way you put it, so that we understand the situation. Like yourself, for the sake of argumentation, I will assume that an undisclosed number of British troops have been ferried across the Charles River. They are now making their way in the direction of this village. Granted? Granted, snapped the Reverend. He never quibbed in an argument. He preferred to head in directly and lock horns. Whereupon, my father continued, you qualify your rights and your duties by asking what 79 men may be expected to do against 1,000. I do, indeed, I do. However, we don't know that 1,000 men are marching here. It be maybe no more than 50 men, 100 men, maybe 200 men. As to numbers, we can only speculate. Will you grant that, sir? Granted. And come to the point, Brother Moses Cooper. Come to the point, I say. He had a knit shawl over his shoulders, and he had wrapped it close about him. If the cloth had not called him, the Reverend would have made a great actor. He had only to raise one eyebrow and look down his long pointed nose at you to protrude more often than 100 words. On the one hand, a speculation, and on the other hand, certainty. What certainty? Reverend demanded. He was becoming very impatient with Father, so impatient that he had walked into a trap without even seeing it. Our duty, our oath in the holy name of freedom. Father cracked out the words like a dead shot. Is our principle flexible? Have we nurtured the committee only to abandon it in the moment it faces a test? We have drilled the militia only to sweep it into hiding at the first glimpse of a thieving redcoat? Father was taken. He could never resist the sound of his own words, and when he saw that the crowd was with him, he couldn't bear to stop. I say no. I say that right and justice are on our side. Who are these redcoat bandits that we should fear them? Are we strangers to the military curse that strangles England? The monster of conquest and blood that beckons us to equate that fat George with the Antichrist. We know where they find their so called soldiers, the sweepings of the filthy alleys of London, the population of the jails, the men condemned to the gallows and reprieved to teach us legality. We know them, and we fear them not. Our course remains the just cause. So, what he's talking about is that a lot of people in the British Army, a lot of the soldiers, number one, they come from places like Ireland or Scotland or Wales. And a lot of them are forced to join the military because they've broken the law. So, they aren't good people. He's saying we are good people. If we're good people, we can beat those bad people. And we've got a better cause, freedom. I felt like jumping up and cheering. It was it was as good as the best the Reverend had ever done on the hellfire and damnation, and it made my skin prickle and my hair stand on edge just to listen. When the crowd let out a whoop, I whooped with the best of them. I was just as proud as Punch. Yet I think the Reverend's face was sad, and for some reason the fire went out of him. It wasn't like him to step down from a hot issue, but this time he did. He just nodded. I'm going to muster the militia. By God, I'm going to, Jonas Parker cried. Can we have the bells, Reverend? Cousin Simmons asked him. He just nodded. Half a dozen of the boys, myself among them, raced for the church to have a hand in ringing of the bells. It's always fun to swing on the ropes and ring the bells, but to ring them in the middle of the night is so much of a treat, and it's downright sinful. I felt that way. I guess that to some extent I had stopped thinking, and I was carried away by the rich sound of the bells pealing across the countryside. Before we rang the bells, there might have been some farmers on the outskirts of town who were still claiming their honest hours of sleep. But when we finished, I will swear that the whole blessed county, was up and was awake. When we tired of the bells, Jonathan Crisp and Abel Loring, two boys who were a year or so older than I, came running up and told us that the militia were signing the muster book at Buckman's place. Across the common, they had both signed and were on their way to get to their homes for weapons. When we heard that, the fever took us, and we promptly abandoned the bells and made a rush for Buckman's to get our names onto the muster book. Halfway there, Ephraim Holt's mother, he was no more than 13, collared him and dragged him back to their house. What she said to him doesn't bear repeating. And while that was a matter between herself and her son entirely, I don't approve of some other things that she said to us. There was a crowd of men and boys, and a good many girls and women too, outside Buckman's. The guest room of the tavern was lit up and packed with just as many as it could hold, with the rest in front pressing to get in. I saw Levi squirming his way into the crowd, and I got hold of one arm and dragged him out. Just where do you think you're going? I asked him. I want to see the excitement, Adam. Don't you know that if Father catches sight of you, you'll get more excitement than you can bear? Does Mother know where you are? No, I sneaked out over the shed. Oh, that's smart, I told him. That's real smart. She's just worried to distraction by now, that's all. Will you go with you out in the middle of all the night and no idea where you are? Everyone else is out, Adam. All I can say is you'd better get home and get home quick. What are you going to do, Adam? I'm going to sign the muster book, I said. Levi must have gone home then. At any rate, he was gone, and moving with the press of people, I found myself in the entrance to the guest room, or hostel room, as we sometimes call it. All around me were friends and neighbors, some of the men grinning when they caught my eye, but everyone warm and nervous and bound together by 1,000 invisible threads, the way people become racing a great danger or excitement in common, facing a great danger or excitement in common. It sometimes seems to me that we live inside of invisible shells, but just as much shells as the fat Maine lobster inhabit. And only at a time like this do the shells melt away and the real people emerge. Cousin Simmons saw me, pushed over, squeezed my elbow, and said softly, "A boy went to bed, and a man awakened. Eh, Adam?" "I do hope so. Do me a favor, Adam. Anything you say, Cousin Simmons. Your cousin Ruth is out in all this commotion, and I don't blame the girl with everything so topsy-turvy. Do find her and bring her home after you sign the muster book." "I'll be pleased to, Cousin Simmons. But sure as the sunrise, I don't whether I'll be signing that muster book. I just have my hopes and prayers. He's all bark and no bite. You should have learned that, Adam. It's slow learning about your own father," I thought, and I said a prayer like this: "Oh, don't let him do it to me in front of everyone standing here. Don't let him look at me the way he does, like I was nothing but a chicken thief caught in the act. And tell me that I'm no account and not fit to stand with these men. I couldn't bear it now. I simply couldn't. I was in the room now. There were at least 6 candles on the table where Father sat, with Jonas Parker on one side of him and Samley Hotham on the other. Jonas Parker had the muster book out in front of him, and when someone came to sign it, he would push it forward him, make a serious and almost ceremonial thing of the entry. Father had the minutes book of the committee, and when someone signed the muster book, Father entered the name and the salient facts in the records of the committee. It appeared pointless to me for 2 separate sets of records to be kept like that. Yet I knew that most of the men agreed that the civil and military aspects of the matter should be cleanly separated. Samuel Hodley was the emergency storekeeper, and it was up to him to determine whether the militiamen had enough powder and shot, and if not, to see that it was issued. When a man had signed in, Jonah Parker would tell him, "You are now on call and assignment until you are officially released from duty, with a release signed by one of us 3. In other words, you are now a member of a good standing, under orders, and in discipline in the Committee of Defense and Correspondence. Go home and get your gun and powder and shot, a pound of bread, a bottle of water. Muster on the common at 4 o'clock in the morning." I don't mean that he said that over and over, but enough times so that no one would fail to hear it. Even though I myself felt Samuel Hodley's opinion, that this was all great bother of disturbance, over nothing at all, his words made me feel cold and desolate for a moment. I was in front of the table almost before I realized. "Name," my father said briskly, in the official tone he used for committee business. And then he looked up and he saw me and he replied. I replied, "Adam Cooper." His eyes fixed on me, and I felt that they were boring inside of me and reading every thought. For myself, I had the feeling that I was looking at my father for the very first time, not seeing him as I had always seen him in the vague wholeness of age and distance, but looking at the face of a surprising young man, his wide brown face serious and intent upon me, his dark eyes shadowed in their inquiry, his broad, full-lipped mouth tight and thoughtful. How was it, I wondered, that I had never noticed before what a strikingly handsome man he was? How was it that I had seen in him only the strength of his overbearance, and not the through strengths of those massive brown arms spread on the desk with the white shirt sleeves rolled high and carelessly? It was no wonder that men listened to him and heeded his words. The room was full of silence, and it stretched, and it stretched, and all the while my father never turned his eyes away from mine. What went through his mind I will never know. But I do know that that time there became an eternity. At last, Father looked at Jonas Parker and nodded silently. Parker pushed the muster book toward me. I bent over the table and I signed my name. My hand was trembling, the letters all blurred and wiggly. "Powder and shot?" Hodley asked me. "Yes, sir." Then I pushed my way out of the room, having no other desire than to be away from everyone else for a while alone. Well, my friends, Adam Cooper is in the militia. The British are coming, and Adam, a 15-year-old boy, has now officially signed up to fight them. I don't know about you, but I really enjoy this book. I think I've read this book 4 or 5 times, and I just couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine being at the forefront of all of this. It must have just been, for so many reasons, so exciting but so scary. All of these people having this awesome belief, but it just being such an incredible underdog victory, right? The American Revolution, for a lot of reasons, was an incredible underdog victory. Kind of like the Miracle on Ice, right? That big hockey game. All right. Well, my friends, thanks for reading with me. I'm glad you're here with me tonight. I'm glad we're together. Let's get to some current events. Let's talk about what's going on. So I will give a little bit of an update. I made a promise to Bella and Christina. I don't know if they're here tonight, but I listened to some K-pop today. So I think I'll leave that until the end. But I listened and I watched 5 K-pop videos, and I have one queued up here, and I'll share that with you guys at the end. So what's going on? Part of what I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight, I know a lot of you have asked about, hey guys, I keep getting this question every day. I get emails from parents and mostly from students, when are we coming back to school? And I just don't think anybody knows. It's all over the place right now. I know the president has a couple times gone on television and said that he wants the country running by Easter, right? Which is a little over 2 weeks away, I think, at this point. Seems unlikely. I'm not bashing President Trump. I'm not bashing him. But we're not going to hit this peak, at least not even in our state. So I'm not so sure that things are going to get to open up that quick. Today, New York, we now have over 37,000 confirmed cases of coronavirus. But one of the things that I found, personally, I thought positive was that only, now I know you might say, well, this is still a lot, but only 5,300 of those people have had to actually be hospitalized. So 37,000 New Yorkers, 5,300 hospitalized. I don't know, what's that percentage? 17%? 15%? No, it's probably about 17%. So, for such a deadly virus, I think that's not horrible, right? That's not horrible. It's going to get worse, right? Without it's going to get worse. New Jersey, interestingly enough, New Jersey now has the second most cases. They're up to 4,400. Yesterday, it was California. New Jersey is overtaking California. So it's New York, New Jersey, California, Washington State, Michigan. But we now have more cases in our country. Okay, Misty Annabelle, thank you for the quick math there. We now have more cases than any other country in the world. But, and again, one loss of life is a horrible thing, right? But we have had, the last I checked, only 300 and, again, I shouldn't say only, but we've had 385 deaths. So if you look at the overall numbers, that's a pretty low percentage. So hopefully it's going to stay that way. Hopefully no one else dies of this disease. So we've been talking a lot about economy versus security or health, right? So all of these different states, the president, all of these different governors are taking a look at, and they've got their scales out. The economy of our state, the economy of our country is very important. But if we don't have Americans, if we don't have New Yorkers, if we don't have Connecticuters, right? That's what people from Connecticut call themselves, right? Connecticuters. Well, then why have an economy? So one of the things that I guess they've calculated, and I don't think we've ever talked about this in class, but New York, when they create their budget, it doesn't go from January to December. Okay. So what happens is New York actually submits and passes a budget. They tried to at least do this by April 1st, which is what, Tuesday? Well, the governor is saying, yeah, that's not going to happen. We're not going to pass a budget by then. Things are just in cuckoo town right now, and we're not going to be able to do that. So what economists, what his bean counters are telling him is this, is every year when we put together a budget, we look at, here's our revenue, here's the way that money is coming in, and then here's our expenses. This is the way money is going out. So not only do governments do this, but families do this, right? So, my boys and I, you met Aiden last night. For those of you that were here with us last night, we start looking in the fall and we start saying, hey, next year we want to go to Maine. This year we're going to go to Washington, D.C. for a week. We want to do these things. Okay, right? So we look at how much money is going out, how much money is coming in, and we figure things out, right? You figure it out. If we really wanted to do something and we couldn't afford it, well, then we obviously have to find a way to bring more money in, right? So, a lot of different ways you can do that. Well, now the state is saying we're going to have a significant amount of money not coming in. Their estimates are 10 to 15 billion dollars. So they're looking at tourism is the big thing, right? Why is New York the epicenter of yep, we'll get to that in a minute, Bella. Thank you. And you're right and you're wrong, but that's okay. We'll get to it. The budget. Sorry, the New York State budget. So why is New York State the epicenter? Well, we've got people from all over the world coming to New York City, right? It's funny. I've been blessed to, for a number of different reasons, travel to different countries. And when I tell people I'm from New York, they immediately think you're from New York City. And they're like, oh, wow, well, you've probably seen people been shot before and all this kind of stuff, right? And they think that, I don't know, like New York is a war zone. But, they think like all of New York is like what they've seen in the movies about New York City. But New York City is a international city. A lot of tourism comes in there. And when a lot of people come into New York City, they go up to the Catskills. They go up to the Adirondacks. They travel all around the state. They travel to other states. So the governor is very worried about the money that he had planned coming in, people coming here, buying souvenirs, staying in hotels, staying in bed and breakfast, going to the Great Escape, all of that good stuff. They're not going to be doing now, or they might now. We don't know. So we may not be able to count on it. So Bella, I'm going to jump into that in 1 second. Here's something I want you guys to think about, okay? And I think that the governor kind of hit the nail right on the head, okay? He said today in his press conference, he said, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. So when we keep thinking, is tomorrow things going to be back to, are things going to be back to normal? Is it going to be tomorrow? Is it going to be tomorrow? Is it going to be tomorrow? We kind of let ourselves down, or we don't let ourselves down, but we get let down a lot because we're thinking of it as a sprint. We're thinking about it short term. And him saying to us today, no, it's a marathon. Slow and steady wins the race, right? It's going to be a while before this is over. So, that seems to me that, we could be at this for a while, which, if we are, guess what? I'm going to be here every night. So you'll at least have that to look forward to. So, Bella, let's talk about the bill that was passed. You're right in the sense, Bella, and I shouldn't have said you're right and you're wrong. But here's what happened. The $2.2 trillion stimulus bill, again, we want to stimulate the economy. It was passed in the Senate. So now, as all of my excellent United States history students know, the Senate passed it. The House of Representatives has to pass it in the legislative branch, because the legislative branch, they make laws, right? They write the laws. Once the House of Representatives pass it, then the president will sign it and the bill becomes law. So, Bella, you are right. It's taken a big step. The Senate right now is, and it was passed 96-0. There are 100 senators. So what I'm assuming is 4 of them abstained, which means this. When you vote for something in government, when you're on a board, even like the Board of Education at Mahonison, you can, when a motion comes up, you can do 3 things. You can vote yay, I agree. You can vote nay, I don't agree. Or you can abstain, which basically means I'm not doing anything on this. And that's a powerful statement. When you abstain, you are then kind of throwing the balance off, right? You're kind of saying, well, I'm not really totally with it. I'm not totally against it either. And you're making it easy for one side or the other. Well, that's the thing, Bella. Bella, again, Bella, I'm super proud of you, kiddo. You're paying attention, right? They don't really know how they're going to pay for it yet, right? And that's the problem. Is what I read today was that it's now on its way to the House, and the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, the House of Representatives is controlled by the Democrats. Nancy Pelosi has said, we're going to pass this thing in 24 hours. She said it looks good. And as the Speaker of the House, she has a lot of influence, right? She can go to the Democrats and say, hey, listen, we got to get this bad boy going, right? We got to get this thing moving. And even as they were debating it in the Senate, right? You're welcome. Even as they're debating it in the Senate, Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats in the House are going to go, hey, Senate, guess what? We're not going to go with that. We don't like that. So the Senate takes those kinds of things into consideration. So, and this is what politics is about. This is what checks and balances are about. And it looks like by Sunday night, maybe at the latest, this thing will be passed. $2.2 trillion, right? That's a lot of money. More than likely, a good chunk of it is going to be borrowed. And at some point, my friends, I'm sorry, I'm just refreshing my crisp ginger ale here. At some point, we got to pay that back, right? When you guys go off to college or you go out and get a career, there's going to be that temptation. Oh, I don't have a prop. I thought I had one with me, right? You are going to get that credit card application, 0% finance, right? And you're going to be tempted. Whoa, I can get those clothes, and I can get the new iPhone, or I can get these things for my apartment or my home, right? But at the end of the day, that borrowing, it's not free stuff. You're going to have to pay it back one day. And if not, right, you are going to carry bad credit, and you're going to carry a slow or a low, excuse me, lower credit rating around, and that's going to hurt you, because what's going to happen is when you're going to go buy a car, they're going to say, hey, we're going to give you the car, but the interest rate is going to be higher than what we would give somebody else, because we noticed that you haven't been that good with credit. So you're more of a risk. So the more money we borrow as a country, the people that loan us the money are going to say, hey, listen, you guys are borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. You pay money back, but you're becoming a greater risk. So at some point, this, I don't know when, my friends, but at some point this has got to stop. So I guess the other part of the bill, I wonder what else you guys read about it or heard about it. The amount of income that you, so what they're going to basically use to determine, and I looked at a couple different sources. There's not one clear, definitive plan, or at least it hasn't been told to the media yet. So the last thing that I read was this. If you filed your taxes in 2018, which most people should have at this point, you can get extensions. They're going to base whether you get money back or not on 2018. Now, I am usually I'm a little paranoid about my taxes, and I'm glad that I am. I'm always kind of paranoid that I'm going to have to pay, that I owe. So, like, I do my taxes like the second week in February. Like, I just get it done. And this usually I owe like a little bit to the state. I think this year I owed, I don't know, 230 something bucks to the state or something like that. So, I'd rather know that early, because then I have until April 15th to pay it off. So what they're saying is that if you've already filed, though, for 2019, which I did, they're going to base it on 2019 taxes. And the last I read is this. If you made under $75,000 in one of those years, you're going to get $1,200. There you go. If you have a dependent, you are going to get $400 per dependent. Okay. However, if you make over the 75,000 but under 100,000, there is going to kind of be like this sliding scale. So let's say I made $90,000, which I don't. They would basically look at, and they go up to 90. Okay, we're going to give you 700, right? You're going to get something, but you're not going to get the full 1,200. So that's the plan as it exists. We'll see once the president signs the bill and makes it law. We'll see what actually happens. By the way, guys, a couple more things to throw out there. Get your questions out there if you got any Q&A for me, and I will not forget about K-pop. Across the country, 46 states have closed states. 54.5 million students are not in school right now. 54.5 million students are home. Two really cool things that I saw today. One, and I really tried to dig around. I'm sure at one point in time, many of you have visited Tops Restaurant. I've gone there a bunch of times. I had both of the Christo children when they were at Mahanason. They were great students. and that's who owns the family. So unfortunately, Tops has had to lay off all but 5 of their employees. And apparently, what they've decided to do for the families that they had to lay off because of what's going on, they are going to feed those families. So, they're just kind of saying, listen, we can't keep paying you. We don't have the work for you right now, but what we can do is we can help you by giving you meals for you and your family. So, kudos to Tops, shout out to Tops. They are still open for pickup, and I guess they are delivering too, if I got that right, from the news. So, if you guys like Tops and that's something I think you get older in life, you start saying, I like going to this place because they have cheap stuff, or I like going to this place because they have the best stuff, or you have your reasons from buying from different businesses. And what I've really been trying to do through all this is buy from businesses that I think do business well. So there's a couple places here in Middleburg that they're like family owned kind of places, and hey, you know what? We don't need to eat pizza and wings every night, and we don't. But hey, you know what? Let's, why not order out, twice this week? Let's help them out, and that's what I think I can do. That's how I can help, is help some of these businesses. And I do it because I think they're good businesses, The other thing that I read that I thought was pretty cool is a company up in, I believe it was either Glens Falls or Queensbury, so up by like Lake George, called Springbrook. They make alcohol. So in the last, 10, 15 years, we've had this huge explosion of craft brewing and craft liquor. The farm that I work on in the summertime, Barber's Farm, they were throwing away, get this, they were throwing away 250,000 250,000 pounds of potatoes every year. So potatoes they pulled up that were dinged or just looked weird or whatever, and they didn't want to sell to customers. Well, they were throwing that many potatoes away every year. So one of the younger sons said, "Hey, you can make vodka out of potatoes." So he was actually a chemistry major when he was at Cornell, and he toured around the country and found a way to make potato vodka. And so all these different industries have popped up all over our state, and that's one of the things that Governor Cuomo has helped do is he's helped to help these businesses and pull people and tourists into these businesses. Well, anyways, a nice way of making a short story long, Mr. Martin. But one of these places called Springbrook has shut down making alcohol. So they've stopped making alcohol, and they are just purely making hand sanitizer. So number one, that's really great. This company is saying, hey, we have a need. We need to help our country this way. We need to help our community this way. So they are now making hand sanitizer. But I guess the scary thing is how close is alcohol and hand sanitizer? Right? I know there is alcohol in hand sanitizer, but is the process that close? Yikes. Okay, what else do we have? I think that's it. I think that's what I've got for current events. So if you guys have any questions you want to throw out there, type them in and I'll do my best to answer them. But now we're going to get to, I made a note and I did it. I went on to YouTube at the request of Christina and Bella. And yet it does sound like a good science lesson. And I listened to K-pop, right? One day in class, I was picking on Christina and Bella because they were goofing around and it was all good. But they brought up K-pop and I brought up Gundam Style, or whatever the heck the name of that weird video or what video was. So here's what I listened to today. I listened to Black Swan, but I don't know if that's a song or a band. I'm not too sure. And I have it right here, and it's kind of weird. I don't know if you guys are gonna be able to see it, right? Is that what you wanted me to listen to, Christina? I know there's a little bit of a delay. Flavor? I don't know what that means, but okay. So I listened to this video. Yes, this is the guys. You like these guys? Yes. The Flavor. So I listened to this video. I watched this video. I watched Blackpink Kill This Love. I watched, and I don't know if is that, I don't know what's the name of the band and what's the name of the song. I listened to Everglow, Dun Dun, but Dun is spelled D-U-N. Then I listened to We Are Bulletproof, The Eternal, and then I rounded it up with Dreamcatcher, Scream. Now, I watched all 5 of these videos, and I will say this, okay? I'm probably not going to go out and buy any K-pop on iTunes. However, and Dreamcatcher was a song that I think was in English and in Korean, but I wasn't really 100% sure. Maybe some of the other songs had a little bit of English and Korean. But I will say this, is that number one, I mean, it's pretty obvious that like this music, this is like legit art. This is really, really well orchestrated. Okay. Stop. We Are Bulletproof, The Eternal is a song they made for their fandom. Okay. Anyway, I don't even know. What is this? We are Bulletproof, The Eternal. So is it what's the song and what's the band name? That's what I guess I don't get. Anyway, I appreciate the music. I appreciate the art form. There was the one video there. I don't know what it was about Black Swan, but something about them kind of reminded me of the Backstreet Boys. And I'm not insulting the music in any way, but I kind of got that vibe. So, like, did K-pop come out of that boy band? Is that like what we did to the world? We gave the world McDonald's. We gave the world Ford cars and Chevy trucks, and we gave the world boy bands. And maybe that's where K-pop came from. But anyways, I really thought that like the videos were really well put together. It's obvious like the dancers are really skilled. I wish I understood what they were saying. That's like one of the things that I think is awesome about music, is awesome about art. It's all, you don't have to know all the lyrics to a song. You don't have to know what every single little thing means. It's just it makes me feel a certain way, and music hits us in 2 different ways. It hits us through the lyrics, and it hits us through the music. K-pop became a thing because of Western music. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, Christina? That's my question. Here's an interesting story. I'll tell you a Mr. Martin story. So when I worked in theater. I think all of you guys know that I used to teach technical theater and I taught design and I used to work in theater and I was working at a summer stock theater and it was a huge theater and we were doing this, what show were we doing? I think we were doing Damn Yankees. Was it Damn Yankees? No. Yes, we were. We were doing Damn Yankees. And we had been approached by these students from Korea, right? They were all here in America, and they were all studying at this theater school in New York City, and they didn't want to go back to Korea for the summer, and they wanted to work for our theater company. And we usually hired like 5 or 6 carpenters. We hired, 4 or 5 painters, and the painters would come in and they would help us, get the set designed and paint the models and all that, kind of stuff. And I had a very difficult time understanding them when they were talking to me. They knew like every word I said, they knew what I said. But anyway, one night we were painting late and I put on the Beatles, right? And Help came on, right? Help, I need somebody, help. They knew every single lyric to every single Beatles song. I think it was the best of the Beatles. They knew them all. It was incredible. They knew every single song, word for word. So you want to talk about Western influence, Western music on the rest of the world. But so that's my Korea story, or my Korean friends. They were great workers. They were really good workers. They were talented artists, and they worked their butts off. They talked to me. The one thing they did talk to me about in South Korea, you have mandatory military service. So vocals. So what happens in Korea is that when you graduate from high school, just like in Israel and there's other countries, you go into 2 years of military service, men and women in Korea and in Israel. So one of the things that they were telling me is that the one guy, and I think his name was Su Jian, they nicknamed him the general. And they teased him because when he did his military service, he was horrible. Like he could run, he could do the push-ups, he could do the sit-ups, he could do all the physical stuff. But when the Beatles are way better than K-pop, everybody's got their own type of music they like, Sydney. But anyways, so the general, he just couldn't shoot. He couldn't do anything. So what they ended up doing is they made him like a secretary, like an assistant for some general. So every day he got up and he made the general's coffee and he brought the general his paper and then he brought him lunch. And, all he did was work for the general for, the 2 years of his military service. But they were really cool people. And like I said, they were very nice. I've been very blessed to have met people from other countries and visited other countries. And, I do feel kind of blessed that we're here. I think we have a lot of resources to handle what we're going through right now. Yes, the Beatles. But anyways, I don't know. Does anybody have any questions tonight that they want to throw out into the feed? While I wet my whistle. I do appreciate your music, Bella and Christina, and I thank you for introducing me to K-pop. It is very, I think probably making that music has got to be pretty intense. Like it's so, like there's so many different things going on, You know what I mean? There's so many different things that go into making it. And like the videos, like we used to have music videos like this in our country, right? We really did. And now I don't even know if like bands make music videos anymore. I don't know, maybe they do. But these guys are pretty awesome. They're pretty well rehearsed. They're pretty intense, and they like all these like crazy costumes, and they've all got these like really intense hair colors and stuff. So maybe that's what I need to do. Maybe I need to like, I don't know, do some purple maybe or something. And they've got like some of those guys, they've got the big ear, like those, what are those things called? The big earrings. What the heck do they call those things? Where they put the big loops. Like you put the small ones in and you keep making it bigger and bigger. I saw one of the guys had those. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. Well, listen, guys, I want to thank everybody for coming and joining in tonight. Our book is heating up, right? Adam is just about to get his first taste of manhood in the way of war. The British are coming. He signed what is BTS? Sir, do you have a BTS bias? What does that mean? I don't know what that means. A favorite member, or which one stands out to you? You mean, of those bands that I watched? Maybe that last one. I don't know. Well, I know what a bias is, but BTS is a band. Is that one of the bands that I watched? I don't know. Black Swan, those guys were pretty intense. Maybe Dreamcatcher and Black Swan, those are my favorite. Is that good, Christina? Are those two good bands? Should I buy their albums? Oh, Black Swan is BTS's song. Oh, I see it now. Look at that. So you guys are teaching me. See how it says BT? What does BTS stand for? That guy's got some crazy hair. Is this how we should start class? Oh, yeah? These guys have a lot of different... they do a lot of wardrobe changes. I think, I could be wrong, I think I remember Mr. Barrega is a big K-pop fan. Maybe Mr. Mr. Veter. He might be a big K-pop fan. Okay, BTS. Now I see it. See, on the screen, it's in two different languages. Yeah, I don't think I have a fan. Bulletproof Boys. Oh, is that the translation? Okay. Say less. Okay, less. Is that what I was supposed to do? I don't know what, or behind the scene in English. Anyway, all right, my friends. Well, another great night of reading and current events and K-pop. You know, I never thought that I would. Number one, I never thought I'd have a YouTube live channel. Number two, I never thought we'd be in the situation we're in right now. But I really am trying, and I hope you guys are doing everything you can to make the best of it, and take time to take a chance and do something. Uh, and I don't know what that is, right? It can be anything. Like, hey, I've always wanted to try my hand at drawing. Get on YouTube and look at some art classes or painting or I've always thought poetry is cool and always wanted to write some poetry. Well, now you've got some time. Do it. Do it. Don't forget to get out and exercise your body. Don't forget to spend every day exercising your mind. Throw some K-pop on, put on those AirPods and get out there and walk a couple miles. Right? Why not? Why not? Or put on the Beatles, Sydney, right? You could put on the Beatles too. Well, all right, my friends, I'm going to fall asleep and dream or maybe have nightmares about K-pop. But I'll see everybody back tomorrow night. Miss you guys, and I hope to see you soon. Have a good night.